Hey, it's Bill Gross, the LA probate expert, with my weekly real estate market update. Interest rates for the mortgages crash above 5%. Will that stop the market? Will that cause a housing crisis? I don't think so. I don't see that. The underlying fundamentals are still way too healthy. Let's go into the data and see if I'm right or not. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So if you follow me at all, you know that I believe that the real estate industry market, real estate news market is worse than the political market in that it's not about information, it's not about education, it's all about clicks and getting upset and selling advertising. And when you really dig deep into the numbers, you're going to find a very healthy real estate market despite the rising rates. There was a lot of, and for good reason, a lot of discussion about mortgage rates rising above a historic level of 5%. And as you can see, all year long, rates have been on a straight trajectory up. Now, the question is, will that continue? Will it reverse and go back? Will it stay at this level? Nobody has a crystal ball. No question, though, significant increase, and that has, in turn, significantly increased payments required for buyers. Now, interesting, of course, cash buyers, no effect because they're paying cash. So that's been one of the big drivers of the market so far, which is one reason why it hasn't slowed down the market. But certainly the rise in interest rates will affect buyers who want to get into the housing market or absorb new markets. So what's it going to do going forward? Is it going to cause a crash? Let's go a little deeper. I saw some great data by Wells Fargo on the real estate market. When you look deeper at the prices, well, the prices that get the headlines, the price of houses today are so high. If you adjust them for inflation, they're not as high as they seem. In my neighborhood, houses today sell for $2 million. That maybe 15 years ago sold for $500,000. It sounds like a 4 times increase. But the cost of everything has gone up. Movie tickets and food and such over that time period as well have doubled and tripled in many cases. And so when you adjust the prices for inflation, it's not so great. Also, keep in mind houses today are bigger on average than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. As the new normal becomes more square footage, more baths, more beds. Also keep in mind, houses being sold today have more features that we didn't even have 10, 15 years ago. Nicer built-ins and such. So all those factors go into a real price differential, much less dramatic than the headlines would suggest. Still though, no question, real estate has gone up in price, houses have gone up in price. Now, what's also true is that there are people who are being priced out of the market. The term is affordability, and it is unquestionably true. You can see that the percentage of income, for example, required to buy a house has shot up during the COVID period to 29% of required income. Now, the last time it was that high was the housing crash, but people kept buying houses back then because of the terrible loans that were created to attract those buyers in the market. We don't have that today. Today, as the housing costs go up for buyers, those buyers are being priced out of the market, or those buyers are forced to make more money to buy a house. But that affordability will cause some political issues, I believe, will cause people to complain about the housing market and claim that there's a two-tier in America, which you can make a case that's true. That's a political discussion, but in real estate, there's still plenty of buyers who can afford those higher numbers. So I don't think at this point we have a housing crisis developing. Now, in order for housing crisis to develop, you'd have to have rising inventory, which I've talked about weekly, we don't have. You also have to have sellers who'll be willing to walk away from homes in desperation, and we certainly don't have that. Take a look at, over the last few years, almost all of the increase in housing price has gone to pockets of homeowners. Home equity is at all times high, while mortgages are slightly higher than 2008. Again, this is not adjusted for inflation. You can see the equity is way higher than ever before. So the housing crisis would require sellers to, in desperation, hand their keys back to banks like they did in 2008, 2010. We are nowhere near that today. Quite the opposite. There's sellers who, if they can't afford to sell the house to relocate, simply can rent the house, or will sell the house at a lower price, or keep the property without any pressure that the mortgage might be creating on them to move forward. So that's another important factor, is the quality of the equity. Another is the quality of the buyers. Take a look at, for the last few years, almost all the increase in buyers for the last few years have been at the highest credit score. So whereas in 2008 and 10, you can see that you had all these buyers coming in who had poor credit scores because of the crazy mortgages being created and the smart money set out. Today, people with good credit want to buy houses. And more mortgages are being bought, more and more houses are being bought by people who can afford them in equity, as we showed before, and also in terms of their credit score and their knowledge of what they can afford and can't afford. One other important factor about the market going forward is the number of buyers who are going to be available. Even if only a smaller percentage of people can buy houses, that overall population is increasing quickly, that will cause more people to be able to buy. Take a look at this chart. The average home buyer first time is about 35 years old. The population had peaked for the last 5-10 years. But look what's coming up. As millennials increasingly come to the market, there'll be more buyers coming to our marketplace. And Gen Xers exceed the Gen Z exceed the Gen X as well. So we're going to have more buyers coming in the market over the next 5-10 years that will create new demand. Again, some will be able to afford and some won't, but the overall number of people who can afford houses seems to be continuing to grow. So what to do? Well, here's what I would say, as I always say. If you need to sell your house, it's a great time. I just had an escrow last week where the buyer thought he had us and tried to negotiate a $25,000 price reduction. I worked with a backup buyer and the agent and went back to the original buyer saying, take it or leave it. My sellers are going to sell the house for that price. And fortunately, that buyer backed down and my seller was able to maintain the sale price and avoid a $25,000 loss. This is the best time to sell houses I've seen in my lifetime in this business for 36 years. If you're ready to buy a house and you can afford it, if you have the down payment, if you have the equity, if you have the income, it looks like the housing market will be solid for the next foreseeable future. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but based on the data in front of us today, it seems like a great time to buy. So how can I help you? Call me, text me, email me, find me on social media, Bill Gross EXP. I'm here to help you. And as always, make today your best day ever.